Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Case Variety Show. Wildcard, I did want to check in with you quickly in a little warm-up kōrero about Steven Adams. Massive week, massive crazy times for Aotearoa sport, so we're just doing our best to stay afloat here and deliver the best content that we can. So I don't expect you to be all on top of the Steven Adams stuff right now, but it has been a big week, or last few days for Steven Adams. He had a statistical performance that you might want to elaborate on, but he also had a couple of highlights for your Steven Adams quotable edition. Not necessarily a Steven Adams quote, but he did show up for a press conference barefoot, which is fabulous Aotearoa vibes, as well as getting more rebounds because he's a big bastard. Among just an absolute forest of Aotearoa sporting mangroves, and then you've got the forest beyond the mangroves of just Kodi trees and tea trees and all sorts of beautiful Aotearoa flora. Don't know if trees are flora, but I just thought I'd throw that word out there.
Flora and fauna, or
Flora and fauna.
I don't actually know what the specifics are of that, but yeah, vegetation.
Among the native Aotearoa bush of Aotearoa sporting excellence, Steven Adams has had some funky times as well.
Yeah, in that forest, he's definitely a Kodi tree, isn't he? So I think there's no doubt in that. He is a big bastard, and so is the mighty Kodi. So, yeah, or when they asked him about, like, there was the statistical game you mentioned where it was like, I think he had 19 rebounds and a half or something and broke the record, the franchise record for rebounds and a half. I think it was against Charlotte. I can't remember. And then hardly had to play the second half because they blew them out. Then there was the next game where it was like they were slightly leading. He hurts his ankle. He goes off. They're terrible in the third quarter. He comes back in and then immediately sets a bunch, like 3 screen assists in a row for Ja Morant or whatever. And there's just really clearly like a massive presence in terms of them pushing onwards to a victory there as well. And they asked about his ankle afterwards, and he's just like, yeah, it's fucked, mate. Sure. But you also came back in and helped lead the team to victory. So either way, like you're doing all right. It's definitely fun times. Like he's really ticking all the boxes at the moment. He's got the quotes, he's got the like on-court performances, he's got the injuries as well, which is a sneaky factor. I'm trying to get ahead on the Kiwi Steve, the first roundup, and it's just they've played a lot of games in a row recently. There haven't been many off days, so it didn't align for last week, so it'll hopefully be finished this week. But one of the things I probably will write about a little bit in there as well is the fact that slight concern early on in the season. He seems to be picking up quite a few, the first game of the season, he got like elbowed in the face by Julius Randle in overtime and missed some time for that. There was another jaw injury, which I wonder if might have been the same thing, like a recurrence of what Randle did to him. I don't know. There's the ankle thing the other day, currently questionable for their game tomorrow. So he's taken some damage, which isn't ideal, especially early on in the season. Wouldn't be the worst thing if he takes a game or two off just to ease up. But at the moment, it's quite hard to do that because they don't have Jaren Jackson Jr. And that has led to a slightly different role for Adams, and one which he's thriving in, but they don't have a lot of like front court depth at the moment, which is a slight worry. But they're churning out games. They're winning. Ja Morant's playing absolutely incredibly, and more than ever before, Ja Morant's like success is, it's not coming necessarily because of Steven Adams, because I think he'd still be doing what he's doing regardless. But Steven Adams is the guy he's going to. Like he's the person he's leaning on the most in order to get his points. Like, set me those screens and I'm getting to the hoop, sort of thing. It's good. Like they've had a really good start, and Steven Adams has been a big part of that. It's fun. It's been fun to watch.
We are from the Niche Case, the niche-case.com. Big up to the Patreon whānau. We recorded a hefty Blackcaps T20 World Cup kōrero for the Patreon podcast, as well as fresh off a question from one of our Patreon members asking about the Blackcaps seam bowling future. So we started our Patreon podcast with a nice little roundup of Kiwi seam bowling matters, as well as lots of Blackcaps chat as well. So big up the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/El Niche Cache, EL Niche Cache. That is the best way to support the Niche Cache content, straight up the guts. Like a James Fisher-Harris carry wildcard. Oh, I love how James Fisher-Harris is... He seems to be the leading Kiwis forward at bursting through the line with his straight up the guts carries. That's a good little James Fisher-Harris moment. And if you were to support the Niche Cache straight up the guts, we appreciate it immensely. Keep some kai on our tables and a bit of petrol in our gas tank. Haven't quite moved over to the electric vehicle tax bracket just yet, wildcard. We're still in the petrol, so keep a bit of petrol in our gas tanks. And shout out to the Patreon whānau, and again, that is the best way to support all Niche Cache content, and we try to deliver an extra podcast for the Patreon whānau every week as well. Email banger comes out via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. Usually that comes out on a Monday evening and a Friday evening. This week we will be dropping the email today, Tuesday evening, so keep an eye on that one, as well as the regular Friday evening, and then getting back to the Monday, Friday flow after that. All sorts of Aotearoa sporting content is updating stuff from the weekend, previewing stuff for the next weekend, news and notes and other bits about Aotearoa sport that don't necessarily fit the big old yarn deep in the mangroves debrief that we like to do on our website, theniche-cache.com. So sign up to the email dispatch, thenichecache.substack.com, enter your email address, and then it's all Niche Cache straight to your email inbox on a Monday and Friday evening. Wildcard. Just take a deep breath here. Let us get into a mindfulness zone. What do you got?
Or how about old mate Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who actually I thought of him because he copped some strays in that book I was reading about the Gnostic Gospels, and they were sort of talking about the differences between the Gnostic Christians and the early, what became the Catholic Church Christians, and how the ones that became Catholic were just like wanted to be martyred, and the Romans were just like, sweet, because we want to kill you. And apparently they talked about Marcus Aurelius and that a bit, because he apparently didn't think kindly of the early Christians, because he thought they were show-offs and rubbing their fates, and which makes sense because he was a Stoic, man, right? He was not the one doing the most of the like chucking them in the gladiator cage to be attacked by lions and stuff like that. There were other emperors who were a lot more sadistic. Aurelius was more just like a not interested kind of thing. But a good quote from him here. Whipped open old meditations and whipped through a couple pages until I found a nice short, like pithy one that would fit. And this one is beautiful. It goes, "To love only what happens, what was destined, no greater harmony."
Beautiful. Let's crack into some Aotearoa sport. Do you want to... We've kind of got a similar thing here. So let me start it off. I'll get the ball rolling. I'll do a kickoff. I'm going deep. Drop out to the goal line. Happy to be here, Wildcard. I don't care necessarily what happens. Well, I do care. I'm trying to pretend like I don't care, and I'm making it up for with all this wishy-washy shit, but definitely happy to be here. Blackcaps are in another T20 World Cup semi-final. Blackcaps are making semi-finals and finals of nearly every major ICC event. Happy to be here. Aotearoa Kiwis are in a Rugby League World Cup semi-final. Obviously going back to 2017. Happy to be here. Don't care. Don't know what's going to happen against Australia. Just happy to be here. And I... again, comparing it back to where we've come from with the Aotearoa Kiwis, I think we should all be happy to be here. And in the same week, UFC 281, City Kickboxing, taking over the Madison Square Garden arena, boxing gym, 1 ounce shed that the Madison Square Garden building has. 4 City Kickboxing fighters from Aotearoa are on the same card at MSG. Israel Adesanya headlining, Dan Hooker's there, Brad Riddell's there, Carlos Ulberg's there, City Kickboxing's there en masse, coaching staff, nutritionists, psychologists, support staff. They're taking over. Happy to be here. Like, 4 fighters, biggest UFC card of the year, maybe up there. Hooker and Riddell are coming off losses. So again, I don't know what's going to happen, right? Because they're coming off losses. It's been tough times for City Kickboxing in the UFC, but little old Aotearoa, happy to be here with some of the sporting action.
Well, that fits perfectly in like a yin yang kind of thing to what I was going to say as well, because you're happy to be here. Doesn't matter what happens next. I'm happy to be here. Doesn't matter what happened before. This is my my take for the week. Is that when it comes to tournament sport, it doesn't matter how you win. It only matters that you win. And obviously, it was watching the Kiwis squeeze past Fiji that inspired this particular idea once more in my brain. And you know, were the Kiwis losing for long stretches of that game? Yeah, they kind of were. Were they at their fluid best? Absolutely not. But are they still in the tournament? Yeah. And did they beat Fiji at the last tournament? No, actually, in the same stage they lost. So the fact that they've made it through is the only thing that matters. If they get thrashed by Aussie in the semis, then no doubt people start doubling back to them maybe, you know, not being in the most flowing form in the group stages and only just squeezing past Fiji. And if they get thrashed by Australia in the semifinals, then that'll actually be fair enough. Like you can do that if that's what happens. But they might not get thrashed by Australia in the semifinals. We don't know what's going to happen there. I've seen just too many sporting tournaments in the times where seeming poor form just does not matter from one week to the next. There's 3 words that matter when it comes to tournament footy, when it comes to all sorts of this stuff, like any knockout sports in particular. Survive and advance are the 3 words. Like it's the only thing. I remember I think it was Euro 2016 when Portugal won it. And that feels like the best example I could come up with, because they drew all 3 of their group stage games. They didn't win any of them. They drew all 3, snuck through to the knockouts, made it to the final, made it to the final and then won the thing, having only won 1 game through the entire tournament within 90 minutes. I think a couple extra time victories. There was a penalty shootout victory. There were the group stage draws. Doesn't matter, because not losing is more important than winning handsomely in these things. The Blackcaps, they slaughtered Australia in game 1 of the 2020 World Cup Super 12, but had they lost to Ireland in that last game, would have meant nothing. They would have been out. So the fact that the Blackcaps Blackcaps are a good example, because they showed this mentality perfectly at the last ODI World Cup, where they were pretty average in the group stages, to be fair. But they won the games they were supposed to win. They did just enough to make the semifinals, and then pulled out a blinder of a performance to beat India and then draw with England. So the draw with England, probably a rare example of the strategy not working, where they survived but didn't advance. But that wasn't their fault. That's just a twist of fate, and they got that karma back in the Test Championship. So that's also probably a reason not to buzz about Pakistan's form coming into that semi-final against the Blackcaps. Doesn't matter how they got to the semis. The fact is they're there. It's a one-off game. Anything can happen. So, but the Blackcaps are there too, because the Blackcaps have also survived in advance. The Kiwis are in the semi-final of the Rugby League World Cup because they've survived in advance. The Black Ferns, for that matter, and the Women's Rugby World Cup, where should have probably lost to France on the weekend. And I think that was the semi-final, wasn't it? Goal kick out in front from about 40 meters right at the end. France missed it. Black Ferns survive in advance. Doesn't matter how they got to the final, because if they win that game, they'll be lifting the World Cup. Survive in advance. It's the only mantra that matters when it comes to tournament sports.
Beauty. Let's get statistical wild card. This might as well be a bit of a hot take. I believe Amelia Kerr is the best cricketer in the Women's Big Bash League. Obviously, I'm from Aotearoa, so got a bit of a bias with me, but she is and has been excellent with bat and ball. Amelia Kerr has 12 wickets, and she is 10th for WBBL bowling rankings. 12 wickets and an average of 20.25, RPO of 6.75. So she's doing a fantastic job bowling for the Brisbane Heat. She is the 3rd best bowler for the Brisbane Heat. Brisbane Heat are 3rd in the Women's Big Bash League, 6-3. So she's their 3rd best bowler, 10th in the whole competition. And she's also gone all right with the bat. She's got 164 runs at an average of 27.33. This puts Amelia Kerr 17th for runs, which is all right. Like, it's okay. It's not necessarily best player numbers. However, Amelia Kerr has a strike rate of 118.84, and there is only one batter who has a strike rate higher than Amelia Kerr's and more runs than Amelia Kerr. That includes Susie Bates. It includes Australian batter Beth Mooney. It includes Elise Perry, Deandra Dotton, Rachel Haynes, Annabelle Sutherland. So Amelia Kerr is one of the best bowlers, ranked 10th with the ball, and she has 164 runs at a strike rate of 118, which is second highest strike rate for batters with more runs than her. So she's definitely the best player in the Women's Big Bash League, and I'd say her batting is extremely similar to Kane Williamson. How about that? Your statistical information, Wildcard.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see the Kerr-Williamson comparison. I'm not about to argue that Chris Wood is the best player in the Premier League, but I am still going to argue for Chris Wood because he scored for Newcastle this week. Sweet as. He got the second goal in a 4-1 win over Southampton. It was a lovely finish, holding off his man with a bit of strength and then just striking on the spin, picking out the bottom corner. Striker's instinct kind of areas there. It was his second goal of the season, but it's his first in the Premier League. Because the other goal had come in a League Cup win over a lower tier team. I think it was Rotherham, someone like that from like League Two. So kind of game where it was a rotated 11 situation. This was the 14th game of the Premier League. Therefore, I have seen quite a few folks pointing out that, you know, using phrases like how Chris Wood has broken his drought or whatever, or things like that. I'm not going to name names, but that was definitely the Kiwi establishment media line on Chris Wood scoring that goal. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's trash because Chris Wood has only started one Premier League game this season, and most weeks he has been a late sub, like coming on in the last 5 minutes or so. 14 games deep in the season, sure, but he's actually only played 188 total minutes. A goal every 188 minutes is actually pretty respectable. Last season was a bit of a dud for him in terms of goals. He only got 5 all up playing across 2 different teams, but a bit of like, you know, changing circumstances for him there. But he scored last season a goal every 541 minutes. A better reflection would probably be the 4 full seasons that he played with Burnley, in which from the first season through to the 4th season, in that order, he scored a goal every 163, 259, 175, and 229 minutes. So 188 minutes per goal, kind of smack bang average for him, actually, as far as Premier League stuff goes. In fact, a goal every 188 minutes this season is technically a better return than what Mo Salah has done so far, better return than what Gabriel Jesus at Arsenal or Marcus Rashford or Raheem Sterling, dudes like that. It's only 1 goal, but it's a better goal per minute average than any of them. It's actually way better than some fella who plays for Manchester United at the moment called Cristiano Ronaldo, who himself has scored 1 goal in 520 minutes this season. 520 of them. Old Ronnie's needed 25 shots to get his 1 goal. Chris Wood only needed 5 shots. So if Chris Wood is in some kind of goal drought, then I don't even want to know what's going on with old mate Cristiano there.
Overworked rugby league World Cup joke is that Cristiano is the second best Ronaldo in the United Kingdom right now, because Ronaldo Mulitalo quickly establishing himself as one of my favorite Aotearoa Kiwis wildcard. And speaking of Kiwi Rugby League, there was some train and trial Kiwi-NRL information that dropped last week. And of course, lots of young lads from Aotearoa were on this list. Dayon Amatuanai, Niche Case favourite. We've talked plenty about old Dayon Amatuanai from Whiti Tira. I think that is Manawatu. And he has been promoted from, he did play New South Wales Cup last year, but he was mainly with Jersey Flegg. He's got a train and trial deal with Panthers NRL. Manly Sea Eagles, they've picked up 2 young lads who were injured. Nathaniel Roach, hooker, who we know well, And Jackson Ferris, I actually think he is also from the Manawatu. He is from Palmerston North. He was recruited by the Sharks, but then he's been battling injuries for a long time. So now he's with the Sea Eagles. Interestingly, Sea Eagles looking for a bit of value. Where do you go for value? Kiwi-NRL lads who haven't been playing. Easy value. Roosters. Roosters have a different vibe because they're all about class, excellence, upper echelons of rugby league. So I was interested that William Whakatomafe and Junior Ponga have ended up at the Roosters on training trial deals. William Whakatomafe, Otahuhu Jr. was with the Warriors prior to the pandemic. Then he went to the Redcliffe Warriors during the pandemic. Then he went to the Panthers this year, where he was playing most of the year in Jersey Flegg. Now he's with the Roosters over the summer period. Junior Ponga was with the Warriors once again, moved to Wynnum in Queensland Cup, and then he was recruited by West Tigers last year. Now he's with the Roosters. So both of them have commanded opportunities. Like Junior Ponga commanded an NRL gig at the Tigers from Queensland footy. Whakatomafe was recruited by the Panthers along with Deon Amatuanai from the Warriors. Where do you want young Kiwi NRL players to go? The Roosters. And I think they both play centre. Whakatomafe can also play fullback. Junior Ponga has also played wing. So I want some Roosters defensive nous ingrained in those lads to really take them a few levels higher. Sharks, they've got Caleb Uele, who is the younger brother of Braden Hamlin-Uele. Knights, they've picked up Tony Tupanuia, who is the younger brother of Sitili Tupanuia. Caleb Uele is a Glenora Jr., Tony Tupanuia, Maris Saints Jr. Titans, we've talked about Vakasikahali from Manurewa. They've also got Emmanuel Kalekale from Glenora, and Emery Perry returns to the Gold Coast. Here's a Tanifano Jr. Emmanuel Kalekale went to Kelston Boys High School, and he was part of a Kelston Boys High School first 15 team where nearly everyone from that team has gone on to like professional Super Rugby or NRL opportunities. Dolphins, they've got Setu Tu, who is playing for Dolphins Queensland Cup this year. He's Otahuhu Jr. And the Warriors, Ali Leotawa, Papatoitoi, Jacob Laban, Randwick, Dimitrik Sifakula, Otahuhu, and Zion Maiu from Tiaratu. They have all picked up training trial deals with the Warriors. They were all playing for the Redcliffe under-21s this year. What did they do? They made the final. So now those lads are going to be part of a Warriors group of local juniors who everyone talks shit about. There's going to be a lot of local juniors wildcard in that Warriors New South Wales Cup team, and I think those four are definitely going to be there. Kepu Twins might be top 30. They'll be playing a lot of New South Wales Cup as well, so I think Warriors fans, we've got an SG Ball squad. Jersey Fleet, New South Wales Cup is going to be another key pocket of local talent to keep an eye on. Deep in your mangroves.
Deep in my mangroves, the Wellington Phoenix women's team have finalised their squad for season 2, and it's a pretty exciting group of players, if I do say so myself. 22 players this time, 2 more than last season, because they've been allowed to assign an additional pair of scholarship signings. So from 2 scholarship players last year, they're up to 4 scholarship players this year. Plus also they had their Aussie quota lowered from 7 players to 5 players, which was a rare sign of good faith from Australian football towards a New Zealand team. That was nice to see. Not sure the Phoenix have repaid that good faith, because 3 of their 5 Australian quota players are actually aligned with New Zealand internationally. They're dual nationals in one way or another. So yeah, be that as it may, there's only like 2 fully aligned Australians in their squad. 13 of their 22 players were with the team last season, so a good chunk of the team with continuity there. Grace Jale and Kelly Brown were the 2 New Zealanders who were not retained. Jale moved on to play for Canberra United, and Kelly Brown has dropped back into the National League, where she's the second tied top goal scorer, and was also getting a bunch of assists for Northern Rovers, playing outstandingly. And Wouldn't argue with her getting another A-League gig at another club if someone else is looking for a cheap Kiwi to bolster out their ranks. Their new signings for the Phoenix this year include 3 regular football ferns, Paige Satchel, Emma Ralston, and most notably 135 cap Betsy Hassett. We've also picked up Marissa Vandermeer and Michaela Robertson, who both went to the last Olympics. Robertson's been playing around Wellington for several years, one of their better players domestically, and Vandermeer last year spent a season with Melbourne City. Claudia Chico is the lone new Australian signing, along with the returning Isabel Gomez. I assume that's I don't actually know how to say Chico. Cicco is how you spell her name. She's actually just been called up for the Australian Young Matildas squad as well. I think that's their under-20s, so shout out to her. The one Australian signing they made is a pretty good one. Scholarship players include Terere Moana Walker, who was there last year on a full deal, didn't get a full deal this time, but accepted a scholarship deal to return, which shows some prime mentality from a player trying to get the best situation. For her football there, Charlotte Lancaster as well has been re-upped on a scholarship deal. Plus, they've brought in 2 new players on scholarship contracts, Georgia Candy and Michaela Foster. Georgia Candy will be either the third string or the backup goalkeeper. She genuinely might be the second best goalie at the team. She was the backup keeper to Anna Lead at the Under-17 World Cup when they got bronze, and also won an MVP for Capital Football a couple of seasons ago in the National League. Michaela Foster is just straight up the best domestic player out there at the moment, can play in literally every position. Fantastic signing for them to get her on a scholarship deal. And then with their 22nd and final spot, they also signed Millie Clegg, who's the best number 9 prospect, at least since Amber Hearn, that Aotearoa has produced. Maybe best number 9 prospect ever for where she is right now as a 17-year-old who went to both the Under-17 World Cup and the Under-20 World Cup this year and scored at both. And I think started all those games. So she is the youngest player in the squad by a considerable margin. One of by more than a year, I think, than the next youngest player. 9 of their 22 players are teenagers, which is a lot, but it's less than what they were last year, where more than half of them at this stage were still teenagers. They have 5 full internationals plus 5 others who have been called up but not capped yet. Last season, only 4 players had previous A-League women's experience. This season, 16 of their 22 players have previous A-League women's experience, and one of the 6 who doesn't have any is actually Betsy Hassett, who has played in pretty much every country in Europe. She's played in multiple World Cups, just hasn't played in the A-League before, so that's about to change. Is it a squad that can make the playoffs? I don't know about that. That's a stretch. It's just a long, a lot of ground to have to make up in one off season. They've definitely got a lot more valuable experience. Definitely, that also includes the internal growth of those returning players as well, not just the new signings that they've made. A couple of them, Kate Taylor, Mackenzie Berry, got on to become full international players since the start of last season. So there's plenty of that. But I'm probably best not to put too many expectations on them as to how they will go. But I will say this, I don't think they're going to be wooden spooners again.
New Zealand Warriors aren't wooden spooners either.
Never are, never have been.
And your no expectation zone reminded me of the New Zealand Warriors and how we should all take a moment to have no expectations. Wildcard question time. First question, who will be the Blackcaps game winner in the semi-final against Pakistan at the T20 World Cup?
Well, I thought about this, and it would be easy to say Finn Allen or Devon Conway or someone like that, or Glenn Phillips, is these guys have had that situation before. I think I need to pick a bowler, though, because I think the strength of Pakistan's team, they have an amazing bowling lineup, but they also have the best opening batting partnership in the world. Hasn't fired yet. I think probably a lot of pressure on them. They're scoring a bit slow. Rizwan and Bubba feeling like if they get out too early, the middle order might not carry the team. So I think who's going to get one of those guys out, or ideally both of them out nice and early? And I think it's Trent Boult. And it would be especially poignant if it was Trent Boult because of how people thought he was never going to play for the Blackcaps again because he rejected his Blackcaps contract. And then he's played every tour since. And if he leads us to a 2020 World Cup final, I think that would be especially cool. So I'm gonna put my money on Trent Boult this game.
I've got a follow-up question. Is Baba
Please.
Azam your favorite non-New Zealand batter? Because you seem to say, like, Baba rolls off your tongue when you say it in the podcast. Like, you seem to be quite fond of Baba's
I
Pakistani
am
batter,
quite fond.
captain.
I am quite fond of Babar Azam. I think he's the best batter outside of the sort of big four, traditionally speaking, the Williamson, Root, Smith, Coley kind of contingent. I don't know if I'd say favorite outside of New Zealand. He'd be top 5 for sure. He'd be up there.
Who's your favorite?
I don't know. I'd have to think. I would have to go through a bunch of them. I might have to say him as a placeholder though, until I can think of someone better. So
you can't say nah and then just have
I know.
Reason, that doesn't work. Your question.
Question is: should the Kiwis get the win over the Aussie Kangaroos in the Rugby League World Cup semi-finals? Should that come to pass, what's the key to victory? Other than, of course, the we. The key is always the we. But apart from that, what's the key to victory if they're going to beat Australia?
The Waiheke Ram.
Here we go.
Brandon Smith. Like, this will be interesting because Harry Grant is already also very good at running out a dummy half, but I just don't think there is anyone as good at running out a dummy half as Brandon Smith. And it's a combination of speed and power and just how he goes about that business. I think he'll play big minutes against Australia. He played big minutes against Fiji, and everything starts around the ruck. So a lot of this also applies to Harry Grant because he's a fantastic dummy half as well. But I think Brandon Smith is going to put himself in a whole different stratosphere. And at the moment, all the talk, Joey Manu. It's all Joey Manu, fantastic. And we obviously love Joey Manu, Tukaroa's finest. But every time he gets out of dummy half, he is following Brandon Smith. So it starts with Brandon Smith. Don't get it twisted, the Waiheke Ram. Another question. Is this the best crop of Wellington Phoenix youngsters that you can remember? Keyword being crop. We're talking about multiple plants of Aotearoa vitamins here. We're selling a crop.
The whole strawberry patch here, not just a couple of berries.
Or the whole crop in your back shed with your setup.
The whole crop.
The whole crop. Not just one plant here, Wildcard. We're talking the whole crop.
Whole
not
thing.
Just one
wholesale.
Wellington Phoenix youngster. We're talking wholesale crop, big business.
I mean, it probably is. Like, I think if you're splitting into into your individual baggies, then Libby Kakache and Sapri Singh are higher caliber individual prospects that have come out of the Phoenix in recent years. But I don't think they've had a situation like when it was them, it was like those two together or one or the other or sort of thing. At the moment, they've got Ben Wayne, they've got Sam Sutton, they've got Ben Old is coming into some really good form. Looks like he's coming to a breakout season. You might want to chuck Callan Elliott if he can continue the form. He had a good game against MacArthur on the weekend. If he can lock down that starting right back spot, then he could be in that conversation. He's slightly older than the other two, but he's about the same age as Ben Wayne, to be fair. I probably should put, they haven't played yet this season, but Alex Paulson, reserve goalkeeper, is only about 19 or 20. Finn Sermon is 18 or 19 or whatever. He was at the under-19 Oceania Championship, captained them, in fact. He's probably the next dude up as a centre-back after that Wooden, Laws, Payne trio. Like, if the two of them go down, Sermon's the next fella up. Saw him get a run late last season. So, yeah, I think you've got, 6 solid academy pros in their first couple of years at this level who have the potential to go on and have careers in Europe. I don't think that's ever been the case for the Phoenix before. So yeah, the best crop, I think, undeniably. One last question. I don't know exactly what the question is, but we talked in the Patreon podcast a fair bit about Blackcaps pace depth, behind the established group of Selby, Bolt, Wagner, Ferguson, Henry, guys like this. What does the depth look like beneath them of a couple of those guys? Because they're all 30 plus, all those guys that we mentioned, I'm pretty sure. So if you get a couple retirements or if you get a couple injuries, what does it look like? Other than Kyle Jamison, I mean, I don't know what the question is, but take it where you want to go. I could ask you about the depth, but we talked about this on the Patreon podcast, and it wasn't strictly about the depth that we spoke about. So this is an extra plug for that. Sign up to our Patreon, listen to what we had to say for 20 minutes version of that. But here, what's the 2-minute version of that conversation?
The 2-minute version is that I am most interested in Matt Fisher.
Ooh. I like that.
Everywhere I look, I'm looking at Matt Fisher's mahi. I don't even think he's playing for Northern in this current game going on right now, where they seem like they're going fairly well. I don't know if he's playing this round, but everywhere I look, I'm seeing progress and I'm seeing growth and I'm seeing development. I'm seeing performances in different conditions and different formats, and I like it. Yeah, he's not playing this week against Central. Northern's got both Walker brothers, who are both spinners in there, Neil Wagner, Kieran Clark, Scott Kugelheim, Colin de Grandhomme. So Matt Fisher's not playing this week, but he does seem like a slippery speedster, and I've said that a lot because I've talked about Matt Fisher quite a lot in recent months. So, and he's just building. He just keeps, every time I pop back in, he's doing something else. So I think that was a bit of a takeaway from just checking up on Matt Fisher again. Musical Jam wildcard. Shout out to Aotearoa band Skank Bandit. I just checked their video, Am I the Master? Sounds pretty cool, bit of rock and roll guitar music. So shout out Skank Bandit. Check them out, as well as a new track from, it's not a new track, but it's a new video from Dead Forest and Dera Milan. Mad one. It's a mad one. Just funky Aotearoa hip hop, bit of Dizzy Rascal vibes I get from that specific track. But it's just cool Aotearoa music, as is Skank Bandit. Your musical jam wildcard.
Yeah, busy week of finding new tunes for me. Recently, I've got a new album by the Sun Ra Orchestra, which is what would you call it? Avant-garde jazzman Sun Ra's continuing band many years after he died, it's not the sort of thing I normally tune into, because it's like, well, the main reason to listen to the band is dead and has been for 20 years. But it turns out that the guy who leads the band now is 98 years old. So he's actually from the band all the time. And it's, it doesn't sound like something made by a 98-year-old. It's pushing boundaries and stuff. Very cool album called Living Sky. Chris Forsyth's got a new one, American guitarist, bit of a jammy bend on that, called Evolution, Here We Come, which is just, good guitar tunes. I think I mentioned Juan's new album last week. There was also a punk album from Australia by The Chats called Get Fucked, which was good. That's exactly what you want an Australian punk thing to sound like. And then also just a couple of Kiwi rock and roll albums that are out that are fantastic. Hans Puckett's No Drama, and then Darts, the band from Wellington, New Zealand. It's called Darts. His album is brilliant. It's so good.
Big up Aotearoa music, big up Aotearoa sport, and big up all the Kiwis. You and I and you, we are here representing Aotearoa. Big up yourself, love yourself, stay beautiful, kia kaha, raise your mana a few more notches, turn it up, stay beautiful, chicha.